It's Monday, November 7th.
From inside the WTOP newsroom, this is the DMV Download, brought to you by Steamfitters Local 602. Get an estimate and learn more at steamfitters-602.org.
On this Election Day Eve, many jurisdictions are facing a problem. There are not enough poll workers, in part due to threats of political violence.
We have a democracy, but it just doesn't go without people getting their hands in there and pitching in and working side by side.
That's WTOP's Kate Ryan, who spoke to veterans who are part of an organization seeking to serve in light of the election worker shortage.
When you go in to work as an election judge, you take an oath to basically uphold the Constitution and the laws of Maryland. It's very similar to the oath that we took when we joined the armed forces.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Cloherty.
And I'm Luke Garrett. Elections don't just happen. They're run by workers who set up precincts, pass out ballots, and make sure voting is safe and secure. This election, thousands of veterans are doing just this, ensuring the midterms run smoothly.
Joining us now to talk about one organization that's recruiting and training vets to serve on Election Day is WTOP's Kate Ryan. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Tell us about Vet the Vote.
All right, this is an organization that was started to address what the veterans are saying is a crisis of a shortage of poll workers, and an attempt also to take a group of people that is very, very civic-minded to begin with,
right,
and give them another outlet to serve. And that was interesting because I asked, haven't we asked you to do enough?
Right.
But they talk about, the spirit of giving and also this wonderful coming together at a time when I think a lot of us feel that there's this huge hyper-partisan barrier between Americans.
And so you talked with Joe Plensler about Vet the Vote. How many veterans do they have signed up? When did this start? I mean, how did this thing come together?
Bottom line, anywhere you see a lot of retirees, a large concentration of veterans, for example, Virginia Beach, Southern Maryland, you're seeing a large contingent.
Arlington?
Yes, absolutely.
And did Plensler talk at all about why now? Why is this moment, a moment where veterans really have to come out and help us run these elections when there's so much shortage going around?
That's precisely it. You just explained. There is a shortage of poll workers for a number of reasons. Our employment is very high. And for years, frankly, the folks across Maryland, for example, where that's the bulk of my experience is in coverage, every year they're continually looking for poll workers. So the call is always out there. Often it's a lot of retirees. And sometimes now kids who can actually get service learning hours can volunteer. But this is another contingent that's ready to step in. And someone with the organization explained, too, we're good at rules. We understand rules and regulations.
Right.
We can implement. So it's kind of like the perfect population to step in. And he talked about doing it in his own community in Charles County and how really gratifying it was.
One of the things I love about volunteering at the polls is that it's one of the few places in today's hyper-partisan environment where Republicans, Democrats, independents, unaffiliated all come together to make democracy happen for the rest of our society.
So that's one of the reasons he's involved. Of course, he's with the organization. But he was really excited by it because he said, look, nobody's a bigger skeptic than I am. At first, I walked into this like, really, how good is this? He said after the 4-hour training, he came out of there and said to his wife, that was like, they're ready for a missile launch. There's so many, turn the key now, secure this, secure that.
Wow.
Just almost like when you hear pilots, doing the double check with each other.
I left 4 hours of training down at my county board of elections, really convinced and feeling really good about that the process has been thought through and that there is enough redundancy built in and two-party integrity around everything in the process that voting here in Maryland is safe and secure.
And again, as someone who's covered a lot of elections statewide and local, that kind of planning does go into this. There's a lot of fail-safes built into the system. And he said that's another thing with people being as skeptical and the mistrust there is, right, of the process. Do the ballots really get counted? How careful are they? He said he encourages anyone, but especially vets, to get in and see this for themselves. And he's confident they'll come away thinking, we got a pretty darn good process going on here.
We should say that some election workers get paid. Election officers in Virginia get $200 a day, but you've had to have worked one election. And every poll worker in all 3 jurisdictions must have to go through that training. I looked at Montgomery County just as, anecdotally. You have to do like an online training, then an in-person 3-hour training. So when you go up to cast your vote, just have an idea of how much time, these poll workers have put in. Many of them who are just volunteering.
Right.
And we should say, too, earlier today, Governor Larry Hogan tweeted that he's issuing a proclamation calling today Election Hero Day in Maryland, thanks to the tireless efforts of hundreds of dedicated Marylanders to, this civic opportunity for us. However, we still have a problem in Maryland specifically. I mean, Anne Arundel, Prince George's, Baltimore, Montgomery, you mentioned Charles County, all have a need for more poll workers. Why is it so necessary that we have poll workers?
Let me backtrack with a couple of things, because he talked about what you're doing by taking part is you're making democracy happen. Like, we have a democracy,
right?
But it just doesn't go without people, getting their hands in there and pitching in and working side by side. And I will say, we also interviewed a Navy veteran, Jerry Bell. You're going to hear from her in our stories. And she talked about sitting down in Maryland. You're paired at the desks of Republican and a Democrat, and you sit side by side and count the ballots together. And she described sitting down at first and not disclosing what party she was in, but saying we kind of like looked at each other askance for a split second. Then we get to doing it, and none of that matters.
You're working with your neighbors. And it doesn't really matter what political party they are. When you go in to work as an election judge, you take an oath to basically uphold the Constitution and the laws of Maryland. It's very similar to the oath that we took when we joined the armed forces.
You don't talk about politics there. You talk about the civics of let's make this happen. And Joel talked about this wonderful feeling of meeting Americans.
It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to give back as a veteran and kind of a transplant to Maryland. It's good to be further integrated in the community.
Like, we're all Americans, and it sounds corny, but it's great.
Right.
And just, you could sense that just in talking to folks who've taken part, what a wonderful coming together this can be. It's like one of the few things I think where people come together in that kind of purely civic arena with one mutual goal of making sure that the election is free and fair.
Right. I mean, it's really refreshing with all the political division that we're experiencing now and political violence and threats kind of abounding right now surrounding this election. And with that in mind, did any of the veterans you spoke to, were they fearful at all being poll workers? Was that a sense you got at all during your interviews?
Not at all. Not at all. This is a kind of, and you're talking to people who are pretty darn fearless, right? These are veterans and who have faith in process. Like when you're in a tight situation, every veteran I've ever heard talk about, even in battle, they talk about you rely on your process. You go through your training. And so I think something like that is what happens here. Now, in our area, we don't see a lot of that. We don't have the violence. But you do have, a little tension here and there. Mm-hmm. But again, it is interesting to see it melt away, kind of dissolve. I've seen that too in some of the local, after the primary election, I was up at the Board of Elections a lot with the counting that was going on. And again, it's every side by side, Republican, Democrat, different party members, different campaigns. The campaigns have the ability to walk into the ballot counting area and see it happen. Mm-hmm. So it is that openness and that transparency, I think, that can bring the temperature down and people can really see it and understand it.
And it's your neighbors who are doing this. I mean, I think that also kind of changes how people perceive what's this dark process that's taking place, above our heads in Washington in some dark room. Nope, it's just Joan from down the street who's been trained, for whatever number of hours.
On the final day of early voting in Maryland, I saw my children's pediatrician, whom I haven't seen for 4 years. I saw one of their favorite scoutmasters, who I haven't seen for almost 4 years. So it's a chance to reconnect with people that you haven't seen for a while.
And I think that, too, in my mind, if you have questions about the process, get involved in the process because they are still looking for poll workers in November for sure.
And this is a continual thing. You want to get involved on the local level. You have the off years, and of course, we'll have the presidential in 2024. And you also brought up something that I think is really important. I asked him about the foundation of this organization. Is it at all partisan? And he said, absolutely not. 30 different groups are involved. It's a broad coalition, and they were very, very adamant that this is not politics, it's civics.
And before, we got on the mics here, you mentioned that, these veterans have given up so much for this country already. Were they tired at all? What was the sense?
A real sense of buy-in, of more, okay, I may be retired, I may not be deployed right now, but I still have that drive to serve my country and my community. That doesn't go away. I think that's a fascinating thing as well, that once you've been in a service position like that, that's not something that just gets tossed.
Right.
It's still there. And I think for many people who've never thought of themselves as civic-minded, once they do this, again, I saw it with, remember, I was a high school civics teacher, and I had students who would get involved in things, and they would get like, oh my gosh, this is really cool, and you can be heard, and you can take part.
Yeah.
And I think, boy, at a time when we all need the temperature to come down a little bit and to really look at where we live and how this works and how it all works together, I think it's really gratifying. It's a fun story for me to tell.
Kate Ryan, thank you for telling us about how our community is really involved in the election process and hopefully maybe inspiring other people to get involved as well. We appreciate it.
You got it.
And after the break, a freak accident that happened this weekend that's more common than I thought.
Backed by the experience of its hardworking members, Steamfitters Local 602 is ready to take on your next commercial, heating, cooling, HVAC, or refrigeration project. Steamfitters Local 602 adds value to our community through its partnerships with local contractors and building owners, all while keeping the focus on improving the lives of its members and their families throughout the DMV. For work that's on time and on budget, go to steamfitters-602.org to schedule your next project. That's steamfitters-602.org. Steamfitters Local 602. Changing lives.
Explain your DNA on 10 cases, man.
You're inside the police interrogation room with the alleged Potomac River rapist.
I'm not guilty on any of this stuff.
So calm, so reasonable. Could this be the man who terrorized women for 9 years before murdering a brilliant scientist 2 decades ago? Experience one of the most fascinating true crime podcasts available. Join crime reporter Paul Wagner for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare series. Search American Nightmare Podcast on all podcast platforms.
And before we go, Luke has a really crazy story that has captured us all in the newsroom.
Yes, I have never heard of this term before. Corneal abrasions.
You've never heard of that? Come on.
No, I've never heard. You have a cornea, sure. Something is abrasive.
Okay, tell the story.
All right. So I'm walking with my girlfriend this weekend in Rock Creek Park. It's beautiful, 70 degrees outside.
Right.
We run up to the zoo, walk back. It's fantastic. We're a block away from our apartment. All of a sudden, I'm walking alone. I turn around and I see my girlfriend just bent over with her hand over her eye. And she's like, man, something just hit me in the eye. I feel like a golf ball just hit me in the eye. I look around, no golf ball. But we see a lot of acorns, around. And I'm like, uh-oh. She then, pulls her hand away from her eye, and I see this slice right down.
Okay. That's enough.
Right down her eye, her cornea.
Cannot.
And so immediately, and it's sunny. If you all remember, Saturday was a very sunny day, and she can't, she covers her eye because the sun is so harsh, and she's so sensitive to light.
Right.
So thankfully, we're a block away from the apartment. We go to the apartment, we look in the mirror, and it's, again, you can just see this slice. Imagine...
No. I don't need a descriptor.
Like a piece of Jell-O, right? And a spoon taken through the Jell-O. That's what it was. And I was like, whoa.
You're going to make people throw up in their cars.
Look, it's fine. Anyway, I'm like, we need to go to the doctor stat, now. She's like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, no.
Not fine.
We should go to the doctor.
Wait, so it was an acorn?
So we think. It's tough. I mean, it hit her eye. She didn't see it, right? It hit her open eye.
Wow.
So it could have been a pine cone.
So random.
It could have been a heavy leaf. We seriously don't know because once she got hit, we were like, we need to get you inside and like protect it. So we made like a little eye patch like out of, sunglasses and like a headband, and then we took her to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor was like, whoa, yeah, this thing is legit. So she's all good. Everything's fine. She has to take antibiotics, and that's kind of it.
Okay, so she can see.
She can see, yes.
Okay.
She's not blind.
Wow.
But the eye doctor did say, with things flying around in the air right now, just because it's fall, wink, wink, things are falling from
and it's a little windy.
above, and it's a little windy. So, they've been seeing people come in with similar sorts of corneal abrasions, just cuts in their like eyeballs.
God.
Yeah, so watch out, folks. Basically, either wear sunglasses or just, be aware of your surroundings. But
keep
it's so
your head
random.
down.
Keep your head down,
it's
I guess.
It's so random. And
I just didn't even know this was a phenomenon, until it happened. But the fall season, things are flying. So
Shish.
Be wise and just look out, I guess.
I don't even know what to say. That's just the most wild story. But I guess things like that happen, I suppose.
Yeah. And the biggest thing, too, was, not that I'm an eye doctor, optometrist or anything, but the eye doctor did say, if this happens, it's really important you get into the eye doctor sooner rather than later. So if this...
Because you don't want it to get infected.
You don't want to get infected, yeah. You want to get it checked out. Eyes are very delicate, sensitive things.
Yikesies. So. And she's probably in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Aww.
She's tough. She's tough, though, so it's kind of hard to gauge, but yeah, she'll be all right.
Well, feel better if you're listening. And yeah, watch out there. That's why those nature walks, man, they can be very dangerous. When you said all of a sudden I was walking alone, I was like, because there was a bear behind.
No.
I was like, what are you talking about?
An angry squirrel maybe or something. Threw down an acorn.
Oh my gosh.
That'll do it for us today on the DMV Download. This show is brought to you by Steam Fitters Local 602, and our music is by Real World.
I can't get my head around. I keep thinking about it. Sorry. Follow us on social media where we post every single day. Rate and review us if you get the chance. And you can become a VIP listener at tmvdownload.com.
The DMV Download is a product of WTOP News. Listen on 103.5 FM in the D.C. area, 107.7 FM in Virginia, 103.9 FM in Frederick, Maryland, online at WTOP.com, and on the WTOP News app. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Stay safe.